Elias caught the locket before it slipped from the White Warden's fingers, because his knees were trying to give out, and if that map hit the stones, Captain Rusk would die for it before sunrise. Silvar leaned hard against his leg, trembling from the Codex drain. Above them, Alra beat the air with one ragged wing, losing height with every turn. Down the ledge, Rusk's surviving enforcers were already shouting for grapples. If Elias chose wrong now, the packed circle would fail, the beasts would be trapped in the basin, and every hunter in the north would have their trail by noon. "The map," Elias said. His voice came out rougher than he meant. "What does it want from me?" The White Warden did not move closer. "Not want. Demand. The old roads open only to a bonded keeper. Take it, and the sanctuaries will answer your blood and your beasts. Refuse, and this basin becomes your grave." Valen spat dust and pushed himself upright inside the dimming arc of the pact. "Elias, decide fast." "They're climbing." As if summoned, a hooked chain clanged against the cliff below. Thorne turned at once, shoulders bunching, a low thunder rolling up from his chest. Silvar's ears flattened. Elias reached for him automatically and stopped. For one sick heartbeat, he did not know why the wolf's fur felt familiar. The hole opened in his mind exactly where the Warden had promised. Winter light, smoke in a cottage, a large hand wrapping his in wool. He reached for a face and found nothing. Not shadow, not blur, nothing. A clean, cruel absence. Elias sucked in air like he'd been struck. "What did you do?" Valen said. "She warned me," Elias answered, but the words shook. He opened the locket. Inside was no portrait, only a pressed scrap of blue cloth and a smear of old charcoal shaped by a child's clumsy hand. He knew, with the terrible certainty of loss, that he himself had once drawn his father and now could not tell which mark had been his eyes. Silvar nudged his wrist. One black eye fixed on him, worried, waiting. That broke the paralysis. Elias crouched despite the pain in his chest and pressed his forehead to Silvar's. "I know you," he whispered. "That's enough. It has to be." The Warden unrolled the map a handspan. Blue light ran through its veins like water, finding an old riverbed. Elias saw mountain cuts, hidden passes, and one mark to the east shaped like a standing man beneath a crescent ridge. "First sanctuary?" he asked. "Nearest refuge," she said. 3 days if unpursued. 1 day if you dare the dead aqueduct." A crossbow bolt snapped off the stone beside her boot. No one below should have had that angle. The Warden's gaze lifted, not down to Rusk's men, but across the opposite ridge. "You have another watcher," she said quietly, "and that one knows what the map is." Alra cried out overhead and lurched. Fresh blood streaked her feathers. Elias stood. Behind him the packed circle was fading. Below, chains were rising. Across the basin, an unseen archer had found them. "Give me the map," he said, and closed his hand around the locket as though he could hold on to what was already gone. The White Warden did not move at first. The basin groaned beneath them as another chain tore free of the stone below, links shrieking as they climbed toward the ledge. Then the Warden lifted one pale hand and unfolded a strip of hide so thin it looked like shed skin, marked in silver lines that shifted when Elias tried to fix his eyes on them. "You may carry it," the Warden said, voice flat as winter water. "But the map does not show roads. It shows costs. Every path asks for something, and it remembers what is paid." A black feathered shaft struck the rock beside Elias's boot hard enough to split stone. Alra cried out overhead, one wing hitching as she banked away from the far ridge. "We don't have time for riddles," Valen snapped. The Warden's gaze settled on Elias. "The dead aqueduct will cut their line and hide your trail. It will also ask for what you no longer hold." Elias seized the map anyway. The silver lines surged, and one route burned cold in his palm. A buried waterway tunneling beneath the basin wall. Faster, narrower, harder to follow. He made the choice before fear could grow teeth. "Aqueduct," he said. "Silvar, left slope. Thorne with me. Alra, high cover." They ran as a third arrow hissed past. Silvar flowed ahead through smoke and moon-pale dust, lean body flickering in and out of shadow, finding the broken stair cut into the basin's edge. Thorne crashed behind Elias, each stride shaking grit loose from the stones. Above them Alra wheeled, but her cry turned ragged. A hooked bolt flashed up from the rocks below and tore across her breast. Feathers burst silver-white into the air. "Alra!" Elias shouted. She did not fall. She forced herself higher, beating one wounded wing hard enough to stay above the next shot. But her flight had gone crooked. From the far ridge, the Watcher finally stood. Not an archer hidden by chance, but a lean man in a traveler's coat stitched with the dark veil mark at the cuff. His hand rested on the skull of a low, broad beast crouched beside him. Something cat-like once, now swollen with black veins and a jaw that opened too wide. The thing's eyes shone with the empty shine of a bond-driven rotten. "A local burrow-lion," Valen said, horror flattening his voice. "Gods, he broke it." The spy smiled across the distance and touched 2 fingers to his temple in mocking salute. "You should have stayed buried, Valen." Thorne roared and barreled downslope to place his bulk between the next volley and Elias. Arrows struck the bear's scarred shoulders and snapped. Silvar reached the aqueduct mouth first, a cracked arch half swallowed by scurry, and froze, looking back at Elias with onyx eyes bright from strain. The old rune was there, carved into the lintel of the entrance. A Codex seal. Open, divert, brace. Elias knew he had known it. The knowledge rose to the edge of thought and vanished into the same white emptiness that had eaten the rest. His hand stopped inches from the stone. "Elias." Silvar's snarl carried pain with it now, the bond pulling tight around that failure, around the missing piece where trust kept finding a wall. Valen caught Elias by the arm. "When they took me, it wasn't for secrets," he said, breathless. "I built routes for them. Hidden roads, dry channels, escape lines. That tunnel was one of mine. If you trigger the wrong rune, the old pressure gates will break." Behind them, Thorne slammed into the narrowing pass to hold the spy's corrupted beast back as it leaped the scree in a spray of stones. Ahead, Alra dropped through the archway bleeding, too weak to climb again. Elias chose. He drove power into the rune by instinct instead of memory, and the aqueduct woke with a sound like a mountain cracking open. The floor lurched under all of them. Stone boomed in the dark. Then, from inside the tunnel ahead, something answered with a wet, hungry roar. He drove power into the rune by instinct instead of memory, and the aqueduct woke with a sound like a mountain cracking open. The floor lurched under all of them. Stone boomed in the dark. Then, from inside the tunnel ahead, something answered with a wet, hungry roar. Water burst through the old channels and silver sheets, washing over their boots as the black throat of the aqueduct yawned wider. "Move!" Valen snapped, already limping forward with one hand on the wall. He knew these passages, or enough of them to fear what woke beneath them. Elias ran after him, maplight flickering across carved arches drowned in moss and old claw marks. Ahead, something vast dragged itself through the flooded dark, scales or armor grinding against stone. It lunged into the light all at once, a guardian beast from the old tamer's age, half serpent, half hound, its body plated in cracked mineral shell, its eyes milk-white and bleeding gold from the seams. Chains of old binding runes hung broken along its neck. The Codex had called it. Corruption had kept it hungry. Silvar leaped first, a blur of silver and fangs, slamming into its snout hard enough to turn the strike from Elias's chest to the wall behind him. Stone exploded. Thorne met the next sweep with antlers lowered and shoulders braced, taking the impact in a shower of spray and sparks from the runes burned into the beast's shell. "Left channel," Valen shouted. "There's a spill gate ahead, but if we miss it, the lower cistern drops into the abyss." Elias reached for the map, and the lines across it moved like live veins, rearranging around a single burning path. "Cost required," the page seemed to whisper in his bones. "Give and be shown." Before he could choose, a snarl ripped from behind. The spy's burrow-lion burst from a side crack in the stone and hit Thorne's flank, trying to drive him off balance and open the rear. Thorne bellowed and twisted to keep the others covered. Silvar wheeled away from the guardian to intercept, but that left the serpent hound free to rear back, for another strike. For one panicked instant, Elias saw the whole chain collapse. Thorne dragged down, Silvar pinned, Valen lost in the dark, the sanctuary drowned before they ever reached it. Then cold moonlight flashed across the water, though no sky stood above them. A pale shape moved over the current beyond the walls. Horns, white fur, impossible calm. The White Warden's voice did not sound in his ears, but in the locket against his chest. A pact is proved by what it will lose. He understood then that she had not only guided them here. She had been watching to see whether he would cling to power or pay for the lives bound to his own. The Guardian opened its jaws. Elias tore the locket free, pressed it against the map, and made the only choice left. "Take it," he said, though he did not know whether he spoke to the map, the beast, or the old magic beneath both. "Take the memory. Give me the path." Pain sheared through him so sharply he nearly dropped to his knees. Something precious vanished, warm hands, laughter, a face bending over this very locket. And in the hollow it left, another forgotten detail blazed up clear as fire. "Turn the spill gate sunwise," the old ward's answer, blood and bronze. "My knife," he shouted. Valen threw it without asking why. Elias slashed his palm, smeared blood across the bronze spindle hidden beneath the moss, and heaved. The gate screamed as it turned. Floodwater slammed sideways into the Guardian, pinning it broadside against the wall. For one breath it stopped fighting. For one impossible breath it bowed its ruined head to him. "Now!" Valen cried. They ran. Thorne tore free of the burrow-lion and kicked it back into the dark. Silvar raked its muzzle and bounded after the others as the tunnel behind them convulsed. Elias threw the last of the binding through the map, not to tame the Guardian forever, but to hold it and seal the breach. Stone crashed down in their wake. The spy's curse vanished under the roar, but not his body. He had escaped or been buried where none of them could prove it. They stumbled out onto a high ledge overlooking the first sanctuary, a hidden basin of clear water and pale roots glowing under the rock like a second sky. The map cooled in Elias's hand and opened one new line by itself, stretching far beyond the sanctuary to a mark he had never seen. Another tamer's sign, older than the Codex, moving. His chest ached where the lost memory should have lived. Yet Thorne pressed close on one side and Silvar on the other, their breathing steady, their bond stronger for what it had cost. Elias touched the empty locket and looked back at the sealed dark. Whether the White Warden had saved them or judged them, he could not tell. But he set his jaw, fixed his eyes on the new mark, and swore under his breath that if memory failed him, he would remember through his beasts, through the path, through whatever came next. Elias stood at the edge of the ledge until his breath steadied, the hidden basin below holding the pale glow of something older than any kingdom he had ever known. Clear water lay in a still oval between stone shelves, and the roots beneath the rock shone with a soft white pulse, as if the mountain had a heart buried inside it. In his hand, the map had gone cold again, but the new line remained, drawn in silver across ridges and ravines toward the mark that would not stay still. It moved, not far, not quickly, but enough that Elias felt the skin rise along his arms. "That is no ruin marker," Valen said, coming beside him, blood on one sleeve and ash across his collar. "Ruins do not wander." Elias turned the map to catch the sanctuary light. The sign was old, worn thin at the edges like a name spoken too many times. He almost knew it. Almost. Some lesson from the hall, some warning from a long table covered in beast charts and old campaign maps. The thought broke apart before he could catch it. A clean, sharp emptiness opened in his head. He reached for the tactic that should have followed and found only absence. Silvar made a low sound in his throat and pressed his narrow muzzle against Elias's wrist. Not comfort. Correction. The silver-furred beast shifted the map with a careful paw, angling it toward the basin instead of the trail beyond. Then he flicked one ear toward the lower rocks where the shadows cut deep and cool. "Shelter first," Elias said quietly, though the words felt borrowed. "That's what I was trying to," he stopped. He had not been trying to say that. Silvar had. Thorne, limping but still broad as a gate, huffed and shouldered past them to the descent. He tested the loose stone once, then took the path Elias would have chosen for a wounded caravan. Narrow, defensible, close to water. Strength where memory failed. Instinct where training had been cut away. The loss hurt more in the silence after battle than it had in the fighting. Elias felt it then like a missing tooth his tongue could not stop finding. Another piece gone. Another price already paid to the pact. At the basin's edge they found a half-fallen shelter built into the rock, its wall marked with the same pale sigils as the sanctuary roots. Inside lay old straw, a cracked trough, and hooks meant for tack or lanterns. Not abandoned by chance. Built for tamers. When Elias unclasped the locket, the white light inside stirred. The warden's voice rose not into the air but through the metal against his palm, calm and distant as winter water. The mark you see belongs to one who crossed the old bounds before your codex was written. Lost if dead. Lost if living. If the tamer has fallen, the bonded beast may still run free. Valen looked from the map to Elias, and, for once, did not hesitate. He drew his knife, turned the hilt, and laid the blade across both palms in formal offering. No more hired road. No more temporary cause. If you go after that sign, I go as your sworn man. By path, by fong, by whatever finds us first. Elias stared at him, then nodded once. He knelt by the spring to wash blood from Thorne's shoulder. The water glowed around his fingers. Rest tugged at every bone in his body. The beasts needed healing. The sanctuary needed walls, stores, watch points, something real, something lasting. But the moving sign slid another fraction across the map, toward the basin. Elias closed his hand over the locket and felt the hollow in himself answer with cold. We hold here tonight, he said. We heal. At dawn we start building this sanctuary into something that can survive what's coming. The map flashed. The old tamer's sign had moved again. And this time, so had another mark, dark, sharp, and closing fast from the eastern pass.